This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, welcome to Serra. My name's Mike Downey, and I'm the director of Serra's Central Region in the heartland of the U.S. This session is intended particularly for members who are relatively new to Serra to bring them up to speed on what Serra is all about and how it works. You should have some printed materials that include the slides I'll be using and some documents I'll be referring to. Hopefully, you're also viewing this session with at least one officer from your club who can point out specifics on how your club operates compared to what's presented here. Here's an overview. 3 areas will be covered. First, the big picture of Serra, sort of the above the club level view. We'll talk about Serra International, its structure, organization, and leadership. We'll talk briefly about the Serra Foundation. Then we'll drop down a level to the U.S. Council for Serra. Finally, we'll review the state of vocations in the U.S. After the big picture, we'll review how clubs work. And finally, we'll discuss vocations activities clubs can engage in. Let's start with the Serra mission statement. It's simple and elegant. To foster and affirm vocations to the ordained priesthood and vowed religious life, and through this ministry to grow in our own Catholic faith. This simple paragraph actually sets forth 3 distinct missions. First, to foster new religious vocations. Second, to affirm and support existing religious vocations. And third, to grow in our own holiness. These are the touchstones of all that we do in Serra. And it's important that our work support all 3 missions. The easiest and most fun is the second mission, to affirm and support existing religious vocations. One of the privileges of being a Serran is that we have the chance to get to know the bishop, the priests, sisters, and seminarians on a personal level that most Catholics will not experience. We do this through appreciation events, and these people are incredibly grateful for all our support. The feedback is positive and immediate. Contrast that with the first mission, which is to foster new vocations. The masses we attend, the rosaries we pray, the hours spent in Eucharistic adoration, we may not see the fruits of these prayers for a year, a decade, or even ever. So what has to sustain us is faith that our prayers are working. But we know they are working because we have it directly from the Word of God. Jesus Christ told us, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send more laborers to gather his harvest. We may not know how or when or even where, but by faith, we know our prayers will result in an increase in new vocations. Let that faith sustain you, even when the positive feedback is not there. Let's talk about the history and role of Serra. Serra was started in 1935 by 4 lay Catholics in Seattle, Washington. In 1951, a very significant event occurred. Serra, as a lay apostolate, was officially aggregated to the worldwide Catholic Church. So far as I know, it is the only lay apostolate officially recognized as part of the worldwide church by the Vatican. That being said, it's important to know that Serra does not have an exclusivity on vocations work. In fact, our role is to be leaders on vocations efforts. And we do that 3 ways. By our own efforts within our clubs, by encouraging and supporting vocations efforts by other Catholic lay organizations, such as the Knights of Columbus, who do terrific work for vocations, and parish vocations committees. These folks are not our competitors. They are our teammates, and we want to do everything possible to make their work successful. Finally, we lead by engaging all Catholics, even those who never may be Serrans, in creating a culture of vocations by engaging them to pray for vocations. I want to say a little bit about the person for whom our organization is named. Saint Junipero Serra was a Franciscan priest who lived in the 1700s. He's famous for his saying, "Always forward, never back," which has become the slogan of Serra. It's from a letter he wrote from the New World to his parents back in Spain. He was born in 1713 in Majorca, Spain, a small island off the Spanish coast. At age 16, he joined the Franciscan order. Then at age 36, he volunteered to go to the New World as a missionary, working initially in the missions in Mexico. At age 56, he began establishing the missions in California, the work for which he is most famous. He died at age 70 in California. It's said he traveled over 24,000 miles in his work as a missionary. And folks, those weren't frequent flyer miles. They were mostly on foot or on the back of a mule. Father Serra was canonized in September 2015. His feast day is celebrated on July 1st every year. That's a thumbnail sketch of his life, but there are 5 things I want you to know about St. Serra because you are a Serran. First, he chose a life of humble service at great cost to himself. It's easy to miss the fact that for the first half of his life, Father Serra was not a missionary at all. In fact, by age 35, he had become a renowned professor of theology and philosophy at Lulean University in Spain. I'm guessing that was a pretty cushy job, especially at that time. You might say he had it made. And yet, at age 35, he hears God's call to be a missionary to the New World and gives all this up. He goes from the easy life to a life full of hardship, danger, and uncertainty. Such was his commitment to do God's will. Second, he suffered constant physical pain during most of his life as a missionary, but he never let it stop him. After first landing on the east coast of Mexico, he set off on foot to Mexico City, 250 miles away. Along the way, he was bitten by either an insect or serpent. His leg became terribly infected. It was swollen and covered with ulcers on the lower portion. This wound never healed. Twice it brought him close to death during his missionary work. It puts the 24,000 miles he covered mostly on foot in a remarkable light. Yet he never let it become an excuse for not doing God's will. Third, St. Serra believed in the power of persistent prayer. At age 56, he set off on the journey to establish the missions in California. But the expedition ran into serious problems when it failed to rendezvous with the supply ship. By the time they reached the first mission site at present-day San Diego, they were almost out of food and supplies, and the soldiers were suffering from disease and pestilence. The Spanish commander made a decision to abandon the journey and turn back immediately. But Father Serra got the commander to agree to wait 9 days until the Feast of St. Joseph for the supply ship to arrive. The Franciscans began a novena of continuous prayer to St. Joseph. On the 9th day, the Feast of St. Joseph, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the sails of the supply ship were spotted, and the journey that led to the establishment of all the missions in California was allowed to continue. All because of St. Serra's belief in the power of persistent prayer. St. Serra was an incredible advocate for the indigenous people. My guess is that Father Serra was not well liked by the Spanish authorities, the Spanish military, or the Spanish colonists. He constantly intervened between them and the native people to prevent their exploitation, and he usually won. Finally, I want you to know the significance of the bell in Serra. You can see it in our logo, and one of our regular newsletters is called the Bell Ringer. Father Serra used an ingenious method to call native peoples to learn about Christ. You have to realize that sites for the California missions were created largely from scratch, and usually there were no native people there. One of the first things Father Serra would do is have one of the monks hang a bell in a tree and begin ringing it continuously. The bell could be heard for miles and miles, and soon the natives would come out of curiosity to see what was causing the strange sound. When they did, the Franciscans would befriend them, give them food, treat any illnesses they could. Then they would send them back to their families, friends, and villages to invite all to come back to the mission. It was an incredibly simple but effective way to call people to learn about Jesus Christ. Always know this about St. Serra. We have an incredibly effective advocate in heaven for our vocations work. Let's talk about Serra International. There are about 12,500 Serrans worldwide, operating through about 470 clubs in 46 countries. Serra is organized primarily into 10 councils, of which the U.S. Council is one. Serra's Episcopal advisor is Cardinal Tom Collins from Toronto, Canada. Serra International has a board consisting of representatives from each council and officers of the organization. The current president of Serra International is Ruben Gallegos from Texas. Serra International also has an executive director who reports to the board. That person is a young man named John Liston, himself a former seminarian. John is also executive director for the Serra Foundation and the U.S. Council of Serra. He has a staff of 3 full-timers and 1 part-timer in the Chicago office. John and his staff are the only persons who draw a salary for Serra work. All the rest are volunteers. In terms of the value that Serra brings to International brings to clubs, it's important to note that our mission is to serve the worldwide Catholic Church, not just the church in the U.S. So Serra International brings the Serra model to areas of the world where no such vocation effort exists, adapting it as needed to the local culture. Serra also brings all Serrans together once a year at an international convention. The Serra International Convention is held in the U.S. every other year. It's a wonderful way to share experiences, inspire each other, and increase our spirituality. Serra also ensures that Serra activities are coordinated with the worldwide priorities of the Vatican, again reflecting our standing as an official lay apostolate of the worldwide Catholic Church. Let's look briefly at the Serra Foundation. The foundation is the grant-giving arm of Serra and is managed through Serra International. Its mission closely parallels that of Serra itself. It exists to fund programs that foster new vocations, to fund formation programs for existing vocations, and to enhance recognition of Serra worldwide. Here's an overview of recent grants that the foundation has given. In 2016 and 2017, the foundation gave grants of just over $150,000 each year. About 45% of these went to religious institutions associated with the U.S. The rest, about 55%, went to institutions in other countries. The foundation gave a total of $123,000 in 2018. And you can get a flavor of the types of programs and institutions receiving grants from the 2 pages following, pages 4A and 4B. The foundation does a lot of good work for vocations. Each year in November, you'll receive a letter requesting a donation to the foundation. I encourage you to consider some donation, no matter how small. This is an easy and convenient way to help fulfill our mission for vocations in the worldwide Catholic Church. Let's drop down a level from Serra International to the U.S. Council for Serra. I mentioned there are about 12,500 Serrans worldwide. Just over half of these, about 7,500 Serrans, are in the United States, which is no surprise since Serra started in this country. There are 201 clubs in the United States. Serra's U.S. Episcopal advisor is Archbishop Tom Daly from Spokane, Washington. Serra U.S. is organized into 9 geographic regions. Each region has a regional director. Each region, in turn, is organized into districts or groups of clubs, usually in close geographic proximity. There are a total of 44 districts in the U.S. Each district has a district governor. The district governor is the primary interface between individual clubs on one hand and Serra International and the U.S. Council on the other. The district governor's job is to advise, encourage, and inform clubs they serve about best practices and Serra priorities in order to achieve Serra's threefold mission on a national and worldwide basis. Like Serra International, the U.S. Serra Council has a board made up of the regional directors and council officers, including the president, treasurer, vocations vice president, programs vice president for membership, and vice president for communications. The current president of the U.S. Council is Judy Cousins from the Twin Cities. The value the U.S. Council brings to Serra clubs falls into four categories. First, it is the repository of the wisdom of Serra. At present, this is shared primarily by the extensive training for club officers held at least bi-monthly by conference calls in the areas of vocations, programs, communication, and membership. It is also a source of new ideas and problem solving for clubs. The U.S. Council holds what is called the Serra Rally each year in January to train club presidents, district governors, regional directors, and any other interested Serrans. The rally is filled with new ideas for clubs and a great discussion concerning issues all clubs face at any one time. Also, the U.S. Council, in conjunction with Serra International, publishes a great quarterly magazine called The Serran, a hard copy of which is mailed to all Serrans. Third, the U.S. Council communicates the vocations priorities of the U.S. bishops to local clubs. The U.S. bishops currently have three priorities for Serra clubs. First is to have Serra clubs support vocations awareness in parishes through the 4 annual vocations awareness events. We'll talk about these a little later, but Serra US has prepared extensive support materials and ready-to-go programs available on the serraus.org website to help clubs do this. The second priority of the U.S. bishops is the Newman Connection. This program was actually started by Serra and it's an effort to keep young Catholics connected to their faith when they go to college. It's important because so many young Catholics fall away from the church when they go to college. Yet studies show this is an age when many religious vocations are discerned. Serrans support the Newman Connection by gathering and providing information to the Newman Connection database of graduating high school Catholics, which Newman Connection then forwards to the Catholic youth ministries on their campuses, so incoming students can be contacted immediately to get involved with the Catholic Church on campus. A third priority of the U.S. bishops is to have Serra US develop web resources, a sort of digital toolbox for vocations directors in each diocese to use in their vocations work. The result has been the serraspark.org website, with over 25 programs ready for diocesan vocations directors to use in their work. It's constantly being updated and refined based on input from vocations directors. Almost a third of vocations directors are new in the U.S. each year, and there's no real training to be a vocations director. Oftentimes, priests are plucked from parishes or high schools and dropped immediately into this important job. Through serraspark.org, Serra US fills a critical role in making vocations directors effective. A final value to local clubs is the professional support for all the volunteers. Included in this is the maintenance of the serraus.org and serraspark.org websites. I'll finish up the big picture by a review of the state of vocations in the U.S. The simple fact is that the shortage of diocesan priests in the U.S. remains a very real crisis. Clearly, a lot of good things have been happening. New priesthood ordinations have been increasing since the year 2000, and the number of graduate level seminarians has gone up since 1995. But as the CARA table on the following page shows, these have not been enough to offset the loss of priests due to death or retirement. So the overall number of diocesan priests continues to decline. Add to this the fact that the number of Catholics in the U.S. has grown by 50% since 1965. And you can see the continuing nature of the priesthood crisis and why our Serra work for vocations is so important. Another aspect of diocesan priesthood shortage is the grave shortage of Hispanic priests. While 35%, over 1/3 of the U.S. Catholic population now, are Hispanic, only 5% of the priests are Hispanic, and most of those were not born in this country. With the evolution of the church into a bicultural institution, we desperately need Hispanic priests that can serve both cultures well. There are some basic facts you should know about vocations to be an effective Serran. These are mostly from a book by Father Brett Brannon called A Priest in the Family. First and most important, the Holy Spirit calls the vocation, not us. So creating a culture of vocations is critical to the call being heard, and this is what Serrans do. Priests have identified other priests as the key influencer in their decision to become a priest. So creating opportunities for young people to be around priests should be a focus of Serra clubs. The time for most serious consideration to become a priest is age 17. This is why the U.S. bishops are so keen about Serran support for the Newman connection. Time spent in Eucharistic adoration was identified as an important factor in discerning a priesthood vocation. For that to happen, there have to be opportunities for Eucharistic adoration, which is something Serrans can support. 60% of all priests were altar servers. This is why many clubs have altar server recognition and award programs. On average, 50% of seminarians discern out. This is not a failure, but a part of the discernment process that leads to a vocation calling being correctly understood. And those young men who do discern out often become incredibly strong Catholic lay leaders in our church. 92% of priests surveyed are happy being priests. While priesthood is much more than just a career, it's notable that no other career has such a high satisfaction level. Finally, it's important to realize that celibacy is not the cause of the priesthood shortage. We know this because mainline Protestant churches are experiencing the same shortage of ministers, and they allow marriage. Too many Catholics naively believe this is the silver bullet for solving the priesthood shortage. The only real silver bullet is prayer and creating a culture of vocations in the diocese. That's the big picture of Serra and vocations. I'm going to take a short break here so you can pause this presentation if you wish to ask your club officers questions about what's been presented. Okay, let's look at how most clubs work. All clubs are chartered by Serra International and have a club number. Clubs are organized by geographic areas within a diocese, but they are organized by diocese, not by parish, and they work with and for the bishop and the vocations director. They focus on prayer, service, and fellowship. The typical year for a club is July 1st to June 30th, as is true for Serra US and for Serra International as well. Here's a final point. Vocations recruitment is not the primary function of a Serra club. While many individual Serrans do on occasion encourage young people one-on-one to consider a religious vocation, our primary function is to create a culture of vocations so a call can be heard, and to accomplish this by a heavy emphasis on prayer. Clubs are structured basically as you would expect. There's a board consisting of current and former club officers. In addition, there's a group of active officers. All clubs have a president and hopefully a president-elect. There are usually several vice presidents as well. A vice president for vocations, for programs, for membership, and for communications. In addition, almost all clubs have a secretary and a treasurer who are also vice presidents. Not all clubs have all these officers, and in some clubs, the same person may hold more than one position. But this is the most common structure that clubs use. Clubs are also encouraged to have a Serra Foundation rep to promote awareness of the good work of the foundation. Let's look at club meetings. Club boards usually meet quarterly. The main meetings for all club members happen usually twice per month. The first is a more formal program meeting in which there's a planned presentation, usually by a guest speaker. It's almost always focused on some facet of vocations. Usually, these monthly program meetings occur on the third week of the month. A second and often less formal meeting for all club members happens after First Friday or First Saturday Mass each month. There's an exchange of information about Serra activities and vocations, usually headed up by the president. But there's also time for chat and fellowship between club members after the Mass. In addition, all club members are invited to participate in special appreciation events throughout the year. Often these take the place of a normal monthly program. There are 5 appreciation events that clubs might sponsor and hold. An event connected with the annual ordination mass at the cathedral, a priest's appreciation event, the bishop's appreciation dinner, a sister's appreciation event, and a lunch or dinner for seminarians. Not all clubs engage in all these events, but most clubs do at least some of them as a way to achieve the second prong of our mission, to affirm and support existing religious vocations. That's a look at how most clubs function. I'll take another break here so you can pause this presentation and ask questions of your club officers regarding any information that's been presented. Okay, the third area we want to cover is vocations activities. I'm going to discuss these activities in 2 groups. First, the vocations activities within the club that are pretty much just for club members. And then second, activities outside the club that Serra clubs organize to engage all Catholics in creating a culture of vocations as part of our leadership role. In terms of activities within the clubs, the 2 most prevalent are Eucharistic adorations to pray for vocations and weekly or monthly rosaries. Adorations can be 1-hour liturgies or prayers stretched over a period of 6 to 24 hours, with each hour covered by at least 1 Serra club member. Often these are organized in parishes covered by the club and happen during adorations already scheduled in those parishes. Weekly or monthly rosaries are often referred to as a 31 club. Usually a club member can sign up for a day of the week or a date each month to pray for vocations on an ongoing basis. Another program growing in popularity is the Adopt a Seminarian program. Club members sign up to spiritually adopt a seminarian and send letters of encouragement, pray specifically for the seminarian by name, send birthday, Christmas, and Easter cards. Some even invite seminarians to a family dinner when the Sems are home. You don't have to know these people personally when you start. All seminarians are grateful to know they are being specially mentioned in someone's prayers. And there are many great stories of Serrans who have formed a special personal bond with a seminarian that has continued long after the seminarian becomes a priest. Some clubs get together as a club to put together care packages for all the seminarians in their diocese. These are often sent out in the fall or during the start of second semester in January. They can include simple items like postage stamps, microwave popcorn, gift cards, movie passes, phone cards, books, prayer cards, anything seminarians might use during their time in seminary. They're much appreciated, as you can guess, and they let seminarians know that they are in your club's thoughts and prayers. Some clubs have an annual altar server recognition and awards events, usually with pizza and pop. Again, we know that 60% of priests were altar servers, so we know this is a rich environment for future vocations. Serra International holds a monthly conference call for International Rosary for Vocations. At present, this is held on the last Saturday of each month at 8 a.m. Central Time. You should begin receiving a monthly email about how to participate. Finally, many clubs are actively involved in gathering information about graduating high school seniors to forward to the Newman Connection so these students can be contacted by Catholic youth ministries on the campuses they are attending. I've talked a lot about the Newman Connection and how important the bishops think this is. I encourage you to review the information on this slide on your own, but mostly I want to encourage you and your clubs to engage in this activity, because if Serrans don't do it, it won't get done. There are 3 other special programs that many, but not all clubs engage in. The first is to organize visits by 3 to 5 Serrans in the club to seminaries on a weekend. Almost all seminaries are open to this. Often you can stay right in the dorm with the seminarians and shadow them during the weekend. From personal experience, I think you will come away uplifted about the good hands that the future of our church is in. Many clubs hold an annual retreat focused not as much on vocations as on the holiness of club members. Often the club chaplain or the vocations director leads this, and it's often held during Advent or Lent. This is in fulfillment of our third mission to increase our holiness. A final special event is an annual Mass to pray for deceased Serrans by name. That's been a review of vocations activities within the club that pretty much just club members engage in. Let's turn to vocations activities to engage non-club members in creating a culture of vocations. These activities are generally organized, promoted, and led by the club, and in some cases they parallel programs we've already discussed. Rosary programs in parishes. Getting parishioners to sign up for a weekly or a monthly rosary for vocations, the 31 Club, just like what we do within the club, but for non-club Catholics in our parishes. Special adorations for vocations. When we decide to do a club adoration for vocations, we can extend its impact by inviting parishioners who are not members to join us through bulletin announcements in advance of the scheduled adoration. A program growing in popularity is the Call by Name program. The club works with a parish priest to invite parishioners at Mass one weekend to fill in a card with the names of young people from the parish they think the parish priest or diocesan vocations director might want to speak with about a possible religious vocation. The card is placed in a box in the back of the church. Serrans supply the blank cards to the parish and follow up by collecting the filled-in cards and forwarding them to the parish priest or the vocations director. It's an easy way for all Catholics to become involved in vocations work, even if they feel uncomfortable themselves approaching young people about a vocation. Great results have been achieved where this program has been used. Starting and supporting parish vocations ministry is another great way to engage all Catholics in vocations work. This should include sharing all vocations program material that Serra has compiled for the parish vocations ministry to use, especially including the programs on the serraspark.org website. Many clubs put together prayer display boards with pictures and brief biographical information about the current seminarians in the diocese. These are distributed or rotated to the parishes for display in the back of church, along with individual cards for each seminarian, sort of like baseball cards that can be taken home to be placed on a refrigerator to remind folks to pray for specific seminarians. Then there are the 4 national awareness events that the U.S. bishops have asked us to support in parishes. They are Priesthood Appreciation Sunday, which is held the last Sunday of September, Vocations Awareness Week, World Day for Consecrated Life, and World Day of Prayer for Vocations, which is held or celebrated on Good Shepherd Sunday in the spring. These are supported in parishes by Serra clubs using the many programs that are available and ready to go on the serraus.org website. Finally, many clubs sponsor and organize a traveling crucifix, traveling chalice, or traveling Saint Serra statue among families or school classrooms for a week at a time. These sacramentals are accompanied by a 7-day prayer program with a focus on vocations. So there's a lot we can do to engage Catholics who are not Serrans in praying for vocations. We're just about done. I want to strongly encourage you as a new Serran to actively engage immediately in your club's vocation work. Here's how. Start with the basics. Attend the regular monthly meetings, First Friday or First Saturday Masses and follow-up meetings, and all appreciation events. But go beyond that. Sign up to pray a rosary once a week or once a month for vocations. Dedicate an hour a month to Eucharistic adoration for vocations. Find out when these are scheduled to be held and help by covering an hour. Ask for any printed prayers that your club may have to help you pray. Adopt a seminarian. Again, you don't have to know the seminarian personally. That will happen as you find ways to encourage them in their vocations through letters, cards, or phone calls. There's no more intimate way to encourage a vocation at such a critical time in the discernment process. Help with Newman Connection information gathering, usually in the period of May through August. Sign up to assist with appreciation events. These take a lot of work, but they are effective and vital to affirming existing religious vocations. Last but not least, if you like what you see, help recruit new members to Serra, especially friends you know who have a special place in their hearts for vocations. We need more prayers for vocations. We need more hands for service. And we need more Serrans to demonstrate there is strong support from lay Catholics for priests and religious. Again, welcome to Serra. I hope you have a much better understanding of what Serra is all about and how Serra works. Our work is incredibly important to the future of the Catholic Church. So engage in Serra immediately. Take time to talk to your club officers about how to do this and ask any questions you may have. Thank you for your time, and may God bless you and your work for Serra and for religious vocations.